You've called your lunch with Xi Jinping in an interview on the way back. You called it very personal. Can you describe what you mean by that?
That we had a personal discussion over more than an hour.
What did you mean by personal, though? I know how long it lasted.
Well, that we raised a whole range of issues because it was personal. I'm not going to go into the detail, but it wasn't so much discussing the affairs of state that we did in our formal bilateral meeting as President of China and Prime Minister of Australia. It was more talking about personal issues, our history,
What did you learn about his history and background?
I learnt a fair bit, but again, they're personal. He's, I think, quite a private person, and it's important that you're able to have those conversations. But in order to understand where people are coming from, you've got to know their background, and you've got to know some of their views about personal things. And I feel as though we got to know each other much more.
You said that they were jokes. What were the jokes about?
The jokes were about all sorts of things, but once again, I'm going to keep that private. But he had showed a real sense of humour, and it was a very warm conversation that we had. He, of course, has visited all 6 states and territories in Australia.
So he knows
most Australians have not done that.
He knows what he's talking about. Just in talking about where he comes from and his background, I'm sure you know his father's last role in the Communist Party. His task was to oversee the reunification of Taiwan. Did you talk about that?
No, it was...
Taiwan wasn't mentioned?
No, we were talking not so much about heavy policy issues.
But that's about his father, very important to him.
Oh, it is no doubt important to him, and he has expressed a clear view about Taiwan, and Australia has a clear view as well. We support the status quo when it comes to the Taiwan Straits.
You described this exchange that you're saying is a bit unusual. You spent time together. You've had these personal exchanges. You described it as the exchange as a moment of trust. What do you think that trust is worth?
Well, what it's worth is not coming on the program and talking about the personal issues. For example, that shows a level of engagement there, and building personal relations, it's no different from building personal relations around this building or at a Labor Party conference, engaging internationally.
Let me just come in there, because there is a difference between building relationships in this building and building relationships with the President of China.
Of course, but the same principle applies, which is be upfront, be clear about what your views are, be clear about what you can agree on, what you can't, and that is the nature of our relationship. I've said that we will cooperate where we can, disagree where we must, but we'll engage in our national interests, and that's very much what we were doing.
Can I just come back to that question of trust, because I do think it's an unusual word that you've used, and I want to know what you think that word means, apart from having a slightly advanced, developed relationship with him. Would he, for example, take a phone call from you in the event of a crisis blowing up over Taiwan to discourage him from invading or blockading Taiwan?
Well, look, that's a hypothetical, which I'm not going to go into. But I have said before that anything that he has said to me has been fulfilled. There hasn't been any breaches of personal commitments that he has given to me. That doesn't mean he's agreed with everything that I've put forward. Far from it. But I'd rather that than someone on an international level saying, yep, we can do all that, and then doing the opposite.
So you trust him that when he says something, he's going to keep his word?
I have no reason to point to any breach that has occurred up to this point.
That's about the past. What about the future?
Well, all I can do is talk about the past because I can just talk about facts rather than going forward. We don't know what it will bring. We know there are significant differences. China and Australia have different political systems. We have different values. We have our alliance with the United States, which is very important. We're a democratic nation, and tomorrow will be the expression of that democracy.
Just before we get to tomorrow, I want to talk about how the Americans will have been watching what happened. Have you got your ambassador, Kevin Rudd, explaining to the White House why you spent so much time with President Xi Jinping when you haven't met Donald Trump? Has he been doing that?
No, I'm sure that Kevin Rudd has been engaging with the United States in the normal way.
But did he need to explain that?
I wouldn't have thought so. I would have thought that Australia engaging with our major trading partner is something that's very sensible. It's about Australian jobs.
But in the particular way that you describe, with trust, with this long meeting, with exchanges, with personal exchanges?
Well, we engage. And I engage constructively, as I have with the United States over a long period of time. I visited the United States 5 times since I've been Prime Minister. I visited China twice. China is our major trading partner. 1 in 4 of Australia's jobs depends upon trade. And China is larger. Our export trade with China is worth more than the next 4 countries combined.
What fresh efforts are you making now to meet President Trump?
Well, we're engaging. I'm available for a meeting. We, of course, will have a range of international forums as well between now and the end of the year. APEC, the G20, the Quad Leaders meeting, as well as the UN meeting being held in September.
Are you hearing any concerns from the White House or the Pentagon that President Xi is using your visit as a way to sow discord amongst the allies?
No. Nothing? No.
There's been no questions about the nature of the trip?
No, not to me.
Communicated to Kevin Rudd, the ambassador?
Not to me.
What will you say, if this meeting with Donald Trump transpires, what will you say to him if he presses the requests that we understand were made by Under Secretary of Defence Elbridge Colby, asking Australia... Let me just explain to people what this is.
Yeah.
So these are a report of a series of meetings that hasn't been denied, a report that hasn't been denied of a series of meetings between defence officials in the US and in Japan and in Australia, wanting to know much more clearly what Australia's role would be if the US and China went to war over Taiwan. What will you say if you're pressed on that question?
I'll say what any Australian Prime Minister has ever said for a long period of time on a bipartisan basis. We're a sovereign nation. We make decisions depending upon the circumstances of the day, and it's up to the government of the day will make those decisions.
But given the nature of AUKUS and the fact that we're going to be, technically, we're supposed to be receiving Virginia-class submarines, do you think that it's a fair question by Elbridge Colby to Australia to be clearer about what it would do in the event of a conflict between the US and Taiwan?
Well, he hasn't made that suggestion to me.
But he's made it to your officials?
Well, has he? There's been reports. There's been reports, and there's a range of reports. And one of the things that we're not going to do is to jump at the different reports about issues in the United States on a daily basis. We're not going to do that. What we do is respond in a principled way as to what our position is. And, of course, the United States has had a long-term position about strategic ambiguity when it comes to Taiwan, and that's a position which Australia has held as well. We've said that we support the status quo.